staff. There was a question about, do we feel that President Ramaphosa and his government will review the economic policies? In addition to what the DGS have said, we don't think that they have a luxury of time not to do it. The people of this country have run out of patience. And I do think that the government is actually running out of time to fix the economic policies. For over 25 years, we have not tinkered the structural arrangements of the economy that was deliberately designed to exclude the majority of this country, which is black, and empower the minority, which is white. The state that was in charge that time used the state-owned enterprises to empower the minority economically and exclude the majority. Our government have inherited those SOEs, but they are more relying on the private sectors to grow the economy. And I would think it has shown scientifically that it has failed. So our view is that we don't think anybody has a luxury of time to debate whether we can tinker with the economic policies or not. It just has to be done. The last question that was raised was, how do we generally feel about the alliance in general, now that we describe it as an election machinery? We're saying in our conclusion of the CEC that we reaffirm the centrality of the alliance. In fact, this country, in our view, would be worse than what it is today had there been no alliance. That has been championing the developmental agenda in this country and continue to defend the poor in this country. But what we're saying is that it needs to change its modus operandi. That is why we are in the discussion of what we call a reconfiguration of the alliance. I know that the past few months we've been preoccupied with the reconfiguration of the state, but the first debate on reconfiguration was of that one of the alliance. And that we're returning back to that it must be a campaigning alliance that resides and based in the masses. It must have joint programs that takes the people of this country into its program so that people understand where the governing alliance is going in terms of the direction of this country. Thank you.
Thank you, leadership. If we have any more questions, we will take, but I can safely say this is the last round. I'm going to start with Neil.
Thank you very much, Neil Kobaya from the Sultan. I just wanted to check here. Did President Ramaphosa consult with you regarding appointing Minister Dr. Zweli Mkhize? I know that Cosatu has called on the former Health Minister Adam Motsoaledi to be fired. And what was the rationale behind appointing Dr. Zweli Mkhize? The second question would be around the appointment of, or keeping rather, Minister, okay, I'll come back to the questions, just slipped my mind.
You want to come back? This is the last round.
You can help you.
Just on the same theme, I just want to know, we know Cosatu has welcomed the new cabinet, but what is your view on the addition of a new Department of Employment while we have labor? Like, how does Cosatu feel? Do you feel like it was well needed?
Indemnity from Newsroom Africa. I just want to find out, what do you make of Mzwandile Masina's statement? He says he's not happy with the appointment of Minister Godan, given that that public reporters report. And what do you make of statements that say that the cabinet is bloated?
Yes, Silvio Pegetta from Independent Media. I was going to ask the same question about your mode of thinking about the appointment of Mr. Godan, given the report of the Vice President. And also, you know, during the Zumayas, actually recent years, as recent as last year, and as 2017, Cosatu has been vocal, you know, about the issue of state capture and what the public protector would have been saying about, you know, the conduct of people that she actually adversely reported about. And with Cosatu recently saying that the president, you know, must set aside the reports by Muhammad, why do you have that kind of attitude to an institution? Because Musisi Mubana is a public protector, but the public protector is an institution. Do you think you are sending a good president when you say the especially given the fact that the highest court in the land said the reports by the corporated are binding until set aside by a court of law. Why would you want the president of the country, head of the executive, to set aside reports by an independent institution, that is the chapter 9 institution? That is concerned.
There's a hand this side.
From ANC again. Just on reflecting on the president again, he's been at the helm for over a year now. As it stands, we have the highest unemployment rate in the world, 27.6%. I just want you to reflect on that, as well as the appointment of Finance Minister Tito Mboweni. I just want to understand your discussions going before the cabinet announcement and talking to the president. What did you say to the president about, because I understand you were quite vocal about him not wanting him as finance minister. What did you say to the president? And now that you'll be meeting these ministers one by one, what will you be saying to Minister Tito Mboweni?
They want to come back. No?
Remember, no?
No, I was covered by it was around the public protector and Praveen Gordon. And then just an additional question is around the generational mix. Are you satisfied with the men and women that the president has included in his cabinet? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sizwe. Ndiqale kuNeo. On the generational mix, perhaps on the last one. Of course, indeed, the cabinet consists of, the appointment of the president consists of 50% of women, and also the generational mix, as you put it, particularly when you see young people becoming ministers, you know, and in the so-called, it's very, if you were, for lack of a better word, senior cabinet post, and it is quite an exciting move, different of course, but indeed guided by the decisions of the ANC, that it will be important for the ANC to really find the expression of its members, that young people must be given an opportunity, women must be given an opportunity, the continuity, you know, and the experience, qualifications, because you would also know that they are not just young people, but they are young people who have qualifications, you know, with them. So we really welcome that. In relation to the consultation on Minister Zweli Mkhize and the rationale, indeed, the president had Comrade Zweli, but you will know Comrade Zweli is not just Zweli Mkhize, a doctor, medical doctor. So, and the experience that he had when he was hitting health in KZN. So it was on those bases that you cannot ignore the changes that he has made when at some point we had high levels in KZN of HIV, AIDS infections, you know, those high rates. It is his leadership that even when there was ignorance of HIV causes AIDS, or when we're busy dealing with those scientific connotations, he went ahead and said, we're going to provide antiretrovirals, and as a result, there were changes. So it is based on that. And I think not necessarily that Cosatu would have said, we don't want here Mutsualeti, because Mutsualeti was there. We, in the initial proposal of the president, it has always been Dr. Zweli Mkhize. Now, the issue of Mzwandile Masina, we can't be answering on behalf of Mzwandile. I can imagine when another one tweets as we are seated here, and you feel that we must now respond on what goes on in somebody's head. I don't think it's fair for Cosatu, as this big federation with 1.6 million members, to really reduce ourselves in responding to what people are thinking and how they express their emotions. He is better placed to deal with that issue himself, on why he has led himself to really respond the way he has done. the bloated cabinet, you know, sometimes you can never satisfy people. It was bloated with 70 what? 2. Now there's a reduction. It is still bloated according to. So it stops being bloated when you are at what number? And whose number is it going to be that will satisfy all of us that it is not bloated? But also you must appreciate that from where it was, there is a reduction. And we're talking about cabinet here. We seem to be also putting deputy ministers who are not part of the cabinet. But also others are arguing that, but as you are reducing the cabinet, you are extending on the deputy ministers. But there's a reconfiguration, a merger of 2 departments. The work that must be done. Remember, we must be about delivering services to our people. So at the same time, we seem to be saying, take away this, but if you take away this and you take so much, too much from it, the end result of it could be a negative one, that we may not be able to do, to be effective enough to do the delivery that we need to do to our people. The president said those ministers will be signing performance agreements, contracts with him. What those will contain, we even said we want to have an understanding so that we are also able to measure. Perhaps it should be an open secret that as South Africans we understand how are these ministers going to be measured on. Now, we should be a bit wary of not making critique on the side, and when what we've been critiquing of a bloated, there's a reduction, we still find a way of saying, but it is still too much, such that we are unable to do the service that is important to our people. For me, it reminds me, perhaps going back to the initial questions that were asked, the influence. Others are saying, Cosatu, you are too influential on the decisions of how the president came to this cabinet. But at the same time, the very same people who critique us would quickly say, but you are a lapdog of the ANC, a voting, folder of the ANC. You have no influence with the ANC. So when we influence, we are too much. When we seem not to be having any influence, we are also a lapdog of the ANC. So that's why Comrade Bego was saying, make your assessment and see how you measure it in terms of your own measurements. But we think that for us, we are happy with how the cabinet that we have received. Of course, we're not going to be happy with everything, because ultimately it remains the prerogative of the president. Even those that we may be happy with, Judgment Day is when they are sworn in and they must start working. You see, I like somebody on Facebook said, at times it is not people that change the cabinet. In some instances, the cabinet positions changes people. So we still need to work and see. As we work with these ministers, we want to see the delivery of the services to our people. We want to see a state that is going to be closer to our people, as Comrade Mike have said, and that is the measurement that we are prepared to do. It may be those that are coming from the Federation, we are happy that they are there, but we will still have conflicts, fights with them that are principled, because it is important that we underline that. When we take battles, we take principled battles. We will never take personal battles, because people will go into the cabinet and they will leave. You will still have challenges depending on how we relate to people on principal matters.
Can I just conclude, Comrade, because we want to conclude now, is that we have made our contributions to the influencing the president and the alliance. And this one has been one of the longest. It was not only yesterday. It has taken us about 2 weeks engaging with the president, from the reconfiguration of the department to now the question of the names of people around those issues. And we have been doing this consultation in confidence with the president. So we're not going to tell you now, otherwise what the president say on this, what did we say on that one. We're making our contribution. Eventually, the president has to decide. When he announced this cabinet, he didn't say this is the cabinet of the alliance. He said, this is my cabinet. And I think the media has all the time and space to be engaging on president and engage him. And I think you are free, most, Nene. You are a fourth state. You can ask him any question you want about his cabinet. And I think we should do that rather than asking us why the president on this one. We have made our contribution in dealing with those issues. On the labor and employment, why we changed this department, the name, this is what was asked by us specifically, because globally, Minister of Labor's responsibility is about employment and the question of enforcement in terms of the compliance. Everywhere in the world, we're saying in our case, that element and the focus on that one is not there. And I think we managed to convince many other people. It's not a it's a secret. People knows it everywhere. The Minister of Labor is called Minister of Labor and Employment, and they have to focus. Indeed, they are trying even here, though they are not saying that. The Department of Labor is responsible in the productivity SA to rescue companies who are dealing with some other problem. They are involved in the UIF, they are involved in the training layoff schemes, they are involved in the job activation programs. So they are dealing with employment, but it's not a focus point that we want them to do in dealing with those issues. And lastly, on the public protector, we respect the office, must emphasize that one. We respect the public protector's office. Like we respect any other offices, whether it's the high courts and all those things. But there are human beings working there. When they are doing well, we're the first to applaud. When they are doing bad, we're the first to criticize without fear or favor. Now, we have debated these matters. We've done with it. We're moving on as Cosatu in dealing. The people involved that we are referring to, they have resorted to some recourses that they needed to engage on. So allow them to complete that processes. But for us, we're moving on now. We want to see the task ahead. And the task ahead is about jobs, is about service delivery, as announced in the manifesto. That's what we're going to be dealing with, as Comrade Soli says, that in 2 days' time, we'll be in the alliance. And the first thing that we're going to be raising there is about jobs, is about the economy, and address the issues of people. Any other issues will be by the way to us. We don't want to go back what was said last week and all those issues. We're interested on the things happening now and the future. That's what the workers want to hear. What about jobs? And that's what exactly we're going to do in dealing with those issues.
President, there was the first question about the president and the fact that he has been at the helm for a year, but the unemployment then went up. The unemployment has been going up for about 2 decades now, irrespective of the president that was there. And that's a point we are trying to emphasize, that it will be a sad day when we think just one individual will have the magic wand to turn around the economic situation of this country.
All right, Cosatu briefing the media there in Bloemfontein, Johannesburg, basically getting more reaction with regards to President Cyril Ramaphosa's announcement of his national executive. One of the questions thrown to Zingisi Walosi, the Cosatu president, was this so-called bloated cabinet. And she was saying that no one, I mean, people can't be satisfied all the time. What number exactly would satisfy everybody? And it's important to get the distinction of terms here. When we talk about the national executive, we talk about the president, the deputy president, the ministers, as well as deputy ministers. When we talk about the cabinet, here we're talking about the president, deputy president, as well as the ministers. And we know in terms of the minister compilation, it has reduced from the last administration. So that's basically some of the reaction. One of the other big stories